been beneficial to you kids. I know that the expertise that these fellows had for you and Coach Jones had for you could be helpful to you. Take these back home with you. Think about these things and work on them. When next spring comes and baseball time comes, well, be ready to go out, get on the field, and do these things that you've learned here today. The next part of our program, of course, is the main part of our program today, and that is to make the formal dedication of this field to Mr. Wayne Phillips. Certainly, I think we would have to say that Mr. Phillips is the best-known citizen of Bennett. I don't think there would be much doubt about that. And I really, truly, you've heard speakers say this time and time again, but I really and truly and deep down do not have to stand here and talk on and on about the deeds of Mr. Phillips. You know what they are. There's not anyone around who doesn't know Mr. Wayne Phillips and what he has stood for and what he has done. He's been such an inspiration over the years to so many people. He's done so many different things. If you look on your program, of course, you read the list of the various positions, the various jobs and so forth that he has held in this community and in this area. And it's just, you know, I really just don't have to go into detail, of course, in all this. Throughout all of his activities and the things that Mr. Phillips has taken part in, of course, baseball has been one of his greatest loves. He's done so much for the boys of this community over the years, not only just his knowledge of the game, teaching the game to the guys who's played over the years here, but for just the time, the money, and the effort, and all the things that he put in to help people. He's just always been a perfect role model for people to look up to. I personally can honestly say that next to my parents, Mr. Phillips has meant more in my life than any other person. I've been fortunate to now have been a high school baseball coach for 30 years, and I honestly, bottom of my heart, this is the truth, any baseball that I know came from Mr. Phillips. The drills, the fundamental things that I try to teach and try to do on the field today, the same things that we did back here in 1953 and 54 and 55, 56, when I was fortunate to be a student, to be a player under Mr. Phillips. It's just great, his knowledge of the game, and it's just been so much to me over my career and over my life, just from a personal standpoint. It would be impossible, of course, to have all the players and participants who played on the town team here, community semi-pro team over the years, to be able to come back this morning and speak. But I've rounded up several people here, 8 or 10, who've played over the years, and every one of them is here this morning. And I think this shows you the type of fellow, again, Mr. Phillips is. Everybody that has to speak right here on time, ready to go, and just happy to do it. I told these fellows that they got 30 seconds apiece. So when they go over that, why, you know, they're on their own then. But briefly, I would like for these fellows to come forward and say whatever's on their mind. First of all, and I told them that I ranged them by age, but it's not quite by age. But Ted Welch is the first one. Ted Welch, of course, is an outstanding pitcher here in the community for many years. Been an outstanding educator in his own right. Just recently retired as principal of the school here. This time, Ted, we'd like for you to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Somebody just mentioned back there, said, Ted said you can tell anything you want to. You want nobody here to know whether it's true or not. I kind of thought Tracy Jones would know. I guess I'll kind of have to stick to the truth. Somebody was so long ago, a little of it's vague, but I'll try to tell it the best I can. But I am grateful this morning for the people that have put this together, are responsible for this day, because it gives me an opportunity to stand before you in the presence of Wayne and tell you and him how much I think of him and how much I appreciate what he has done in this community. Now, not only is Wayne Phillips Mr. Baseball here in Bennett, but he's made so many other contributions to this community. I can't mention them all, but two or three especially that I want to say a little something about. Of course, he's very active in the church, here in our local church. He was very instrumental in the first telephones that came to Bennett, if my memory is correct. And I believe that he took some high school students and strung wire from Bennett to Coleridge and got the first phone in here. So now we have a very modern telephone system, and he's the president of that Randolph Telephone Commission at this time. And another thing I think is very outstanding, how many communities you know the size of Bennett that has a water system, and we have had for many years. Now, Wayne was the man behind this idea. I don't think there'd be any water system here in Bennett, not in the county, if he hadn't started this project many years ago. He had to convince a lot of people that it could be done. Finally, the plans were drawn up, and the system was installed. Now, in the last maybe couple of years, the county system has been run to Bennett, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been here, that they would not have run the lines if this system had not already been here. So we can give him credit for a lot of things in this community. Now back to baseball. I remember when Wayne first started playing with the town team. Bennett has always had a lot of interest in baseball, not only with the younger kids, but with older people too. And when he was, I'm sure, he was no more than the 7th grader when he started playing here with the town team. There were some good ball players back then. Some of these older men were good ball players, but he was good enough an athlete that he could play with the town team here when I think he was a 7th grader. After he came out of the Marines after World War II, and he came back out of the Marines, he came back here, of course, and played baseball again. A little later on, he was a manager, I believe, since 1946, and he's still at it. He's still the manager here of this town team today. Of course, he played for many, many years before he gave up some of his playing time. Now, Wayne and I are longtime friends. We grew up here together. We used to be young men like some of you folks out there. And we dated together. Of course, we never dated anybody, but our wives is here today. But we dated together. We played baseball together. I quit when I was 44 years old, quit playing baseball here, but he's still at it. And another thing you might not want to tell, he used to have a motorcycle. And we took many, many rides on that. And one time, at least one time, I was with him, riding with him, sitting right behind him on that motorcycle, and we was doing 100 miles an hour, and I don't think the roads even paved at that time. So we used to be young also. Seriously, Wayne is the most dedicated community servant that I know. I don't know of anyone, anywhere, that has given more of his time and of himself to community projects. And while I was here, my wife said, Ted, you better tell them people that I said that if we had more Wayne Phillipses, that this would be a better world to live in. Now, Wayne has helped. Wayne has helped make this a better world and a better community in which for each of us to live. And thank you for that, Wayne.
Next, we have Ray Jones, who was an outstanding catcher, outstanding player here back in the early 1950s.
Thank you, Coach Scott, Mr. Welch. Coach Scott called and asked that I would say a few words today, and I wasn't home. And Shirley told me. I said, well, I'm not a speaker, Shirley, but she said, what's the matter? Don't you know anything on him? So maybe she had in mind to roast him. It might have been the most interesting, I believe, what they do sometimes, but to make me feel better, then she says, I think they want some that go way back. So in thinking about playing and Mr. Phillips, I remember him, and I realized I do go back a ways. And the first time that I remember playing, something Mr. Welch mentioned, I believe, and there might be some repeats, but it was playing with a town team or semi-pro team, as we call it here. And I learned later that he was about 15, which I guess maybe he wasn't 15 in 7th grade, he might have been 14, something. Anyway, he was playing with a town team, and the reason I remember that they traveled at least part of the time. My dad took the team on a flatbed truck. That was their bus then, as hear the maybe minor league teams complain today about their air-conditioned buses, and certainly I'm sure they do have long trips, but I believe that's right, that many times they went to the game on the back of a flatbed truck, and I don't know what happened if it rained. But probably there was not Little League here then, and much less the Pee-wees and the midget and the programs they have today, and I think they're great that they do have them for the young boys and girls to play at this time. And certainly I'm proud of all the facilities that we have here for them. But probably his first playing was with choose-up teams, or as it used to be here in Benny, one side of the railroad play the other. Probably was where he got his start, as most of us did, as I came along not much later. But he was, at that time, able to play, and speaks for him as a young ball player with the older men in the semi-pro league. I remember going to Flint Ridge, I believe it was, one of the teams, on one occasion in that year, playing in the league, and it was quite competitive, as always been here. You were expected to win, and certainly that helped, and the support of the fans, what has been strong over the years. And thinking back, I can't remember much about his high school days, but I know that he was an outstanding player here. Maybe I didn't know, there was not as many games then in high schools. Didn't have the organizations like we have today. But I don't remember them, as maybe some can tell, or maybe he will. I believe the next in his baseball career was maybe, of course, along in high school, he continued playing for the semi-pro team here. Then I understand he did play in the service, being in the Marine Corps. And I believe he was a catcher then, as the team I mentioned on before, I remember him playing shortstop. So as we talk about his career, you see he's played most of the positions, I believe, on good ball clubs. But also something I remembered from his time in the service, which was during World War II, and times that he would be in on leave, I remember seeing Mr. Phillips at church. Maybe not all of the people that didn't have much time at home during the war, but I remember that he did come to church then as a young man in the Marine Corps serving his country in wartime. Also after that, coming back, he did enter college, and his college ball, first year I believe was at Catawba. And as Mr. Welch mentioned the motorcycle, there was something I remembered about that. The fans here, of course, wanted Mr. Phillips to be here, and I remember some talking one day. This came back to me and said, I don't know if Doc, is what he was called in his early age, says, I don't know if Doc can make it in for the weekday game. Played on Wednesday then, and one person spoke up and says, oh, it doesn't take him about an hour. And that's from Salisbury, you know. No interstates in those days. And then, I believe after 1 year, he moved on to Elon. And things I remember about that, I don't guess I was able to go to the games when Elon Christians played, but I remember the box scores in the paper, and I was glad they mentioned average, because I had no idea of that, but I remember that he was usually, his name in the box score was usually about the middle of the order, about fifth, and he played left field, I believe, which wasn't mentioned, another position, at least some of the time. I hope what I'm saying is close to right. It has been a few years, but he must have been a good RBI man. I believe he was batting in about the fifth spot, as I remember, on the Elon teams. Then after college, the times that I remember, of course, was playing in the Piedmont League, which was a strong industrial league. And he played for many years. I believe his position there was third base. The thing I remember maybe about, that came back to me about that league is the only time I remember opposing him on the team. And being a catcher, you hate to see these guys come up that you think, well, you got to throw it down the middle before they'll swing. And Mr. Phillips was batting leadoff for that Robbins team. And certainly he did have the good eye to play. He looked like on base about all the time, and maybe it was like they say about Wade Boggs today, that he had such a good eye to play, maybe the umpires won't call him out. Maybe Mr. Phillips was like that. But certainly he was a big contributor to the team there in a strong semi-pro league, which had many ex-pro players, and I think it would have compared with maybe not even the lowest minor league teams, but even higher than that. And then maybe before that, anyway, was back here playing, maybe some of the time before that, but as Mr. Welch mentioned, with the Deep River League team here, or maybe while he was in college, I believe Mr. Phillips was not manager, but maybe playing shortstop. But after the tenure there as a ball player, he was back here and also a playing manager. And one thing I remembered from that era was sometime when we had many ball players, Mr. Phillips would take himself out of the lineup, when really it would have been a better lineup with him in there. But he was unselfish enough that he would let others play and maybe not be in the lineup. And a lot of us probably couldn't have done that. And I know he would have liked to play, certainly.